So, as I said, I'm going to continue exploring this theme of motivation. I've spent quite a bit of time on it already in different ways, and hopefully that will turn out to have been useful. And this week, I wanted to look specifically at the relationship between our intentions, our actions, and the results that those actions lead to, the experiences of our life. So if you like, you can think about that in terms of past, present, future. You know, what you're doing now arose out of some intention, definitely. Might be an unconscious one, but everything that we do is, I think, is the product of an intention. So, and everything that happens to us, or that the events, the experiences that we have in our lives, can be seen as the product of our action. And I say they can be seen in that way because we often see them in a different way. We see them as just things that happen to us, right? We have the experience that this just happened to me, was nothing to do with me. Right? You know, why did that happen to me? It's you know, it was an accident. It was a fate. It was something quite disconnected from any kind of free choice on my part. And of course, that in a way is one side of the truth. But inevitably, it has to be the case, I think, that for that event to happen to me, I had to be in a certain place at a certain time. And that's probably has to do with some choices that I made. And often things that seem like fate or accident have a lot more to do with choices than we think. So, you know, well, I went into this relationship and it just didn't work out. This person was the wrong person for me. And that was, so we can think about that as this was just a misfortune that happened. But actually, I did choose to be in that relationship. And the problem that then arose, although I may not have seen it clearly, it was there. It was there for me to see, and I didn't see it. So that applies to all kinds of things, you know, our relationships, our jobs, all our choices. Not everything is clearly visible on the surface. The possibilities, the potentialities that are in that situation that we choose to go into may not be clearly apparent. Or they may be very obvious to somebody else, and we don't see them because we're focused on one particular aspect. I mean, it's very notorious with relationships that we can get completely excited by one aspect of a person and be quite blind to other aspects that would have been useful to think about. And the same goes for everything. It goes for our jobs, and it goes for all of our choices, actually. So what I'm kind of trying to bring out here is that, as I say, there are these two alternative ways of looking at our life. We can see our life as something that happens to us and it's not our fault, and therefore we don't have control. We cannot create our life being the way that we want it to be. We just have to accept what, if you like, fate is dishing out. And that can be a very potent experience. You know, it can really feel very much like that. It can feel as though we don't have any agency in our lives. We don't have that. We're not in the driving seat. But if we look honestly, we can usually see, oh yeah, there was a choice that I made there, and maybe that choice wasn't the wisest choice I could have made. And maybe that is a lot to do with why I'm experiencing why I'm going through what I'm going through now. And I firmly believe from my own experience, as well as from Buddhist teachings and other kind of ideas and things that I've studied and so on, that we have a great deal more control, potentially at least, than we usually think we have. A great deal of ability to create our life flowering in the way that we would ideally like it to. And one reason why we tend not to feel that is because we want instant results. And, I use the word flower in a way quite deliberately because um, it is an organic process. And we tend to think about intention and creating results in a mechanistic way. We think, well, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want. This is the result I want to achieve. And to make that happen, I have to do X, Y, and Z in that series. This is the kind of accepted way of thinking. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, by the way. But it's like an engineering way of thinking about how we make things happen in the world. That is kind of, it may be beginning to be a little bit less, but it certainly was, for a long time. So that's the way, of course, we have a world now, if you like, or a civilization, society, where machines are, literal machines are very important. And that is the way you have to think when you're building a machine. And it's a way of thinking that's in large organizations, is obviously very important. Have to think about, this kind of linear logic sort of way. How are we going to create this result? We have to do this and this and this. But in our individual life, often that way of thinking is not the most useful one. Often, and it can also be connected, I think, with a more limited understanding of our potential, what we can achieve. Okay, so if we think more organically, if we think, well, if I want to go in this direction in my life, and from day to day, I kind of feed that intention, if you like. Maybe I spend a few minutes every day thinking about it, or perhaps, I buy a notebook, a journal book, and I write about it every day. Or I just begin every day sort of training myself in something, spending a few minutes a day. So if I want to practice yoga, for instance, well, I don't look at the yoga book and I think, okay, I'll just memorize these instructions and then I will do all of the exercises in the book now. Doesn't work. We have to practice, and gradually our ability naturally improves. And we may think at the beginning, well, I'm not very good at this. Almost bound to think that, actually, I think, because it doesn't progress as quickly as we at first imagine that it's going to. Perhaps if you're very young and flexible and so on. But again, probably only because you've done a lot of exercise before. For most of us, this is going to take a long time, and so we tend to think, after the first year, I haven't made very much progress. I'm never going to get really good at this. I might be doing 15 minutes a day. I haven't got very far. But if we keep it up for 10 years, there'll be a result. So that's, I think, very important to understand how our initial assessment of what we're capable of can be very misleading. If we really want to do something, if we're prepared to hang in there for the time that it takes, then yes, we can achieve very significant results. So our tendency, is to imagine much less than we actually are capable of, because we tend to judge things by where we are now. It's difficult to really let our imagination grasp what happens when you grow something progressively over a period of time. So I'm talking here about, our potential. We do have the potential to create whatever we want to create. It's a very bold statement. And like I said, I think we've spoken a little bit about this kind of thing before. And, if you kind of name something ridiculous, like for me, at age 67, I'm not going to break the world 100 meter sprint record in this life. Don't think so. I mean, not very likely. But I did actually, I forget which African country it is, whether it's Kenya or Tanzania, but there is one where the people there, the traditional people there, they do a lot of running. It's kind of part of their way of life. And they have the belief, their viewpoint, is that you reach your peak as a runner around about the age of 70. So it's a long distance running. I guess sprinting's a bit different, but that turns out that is the case in that country. And I think some of the people from that culture have become, major athletes. So we're not talking about, people who are not really achieving a great deal. So how much we can do, what we can achieve, is very dependent on our beliefs about that. Leave a moment for that to sink in, because if we can accept that as something that's probably true, then if I recognize that my beliefs about what I'm capable of are rather limited, then maybe I could do something about that, change those beliefs. Because oftentimes those beliefs, are there not because of any very deep sort of investigation that we've personally done, but because perhaps as a very young person, as a child, things that people said or did caused us to adopt those beliefs of having a limited potential. And then they stuck. Especially, things that were said to us very strongly at a very young age, they tend to stick deep in the mind, difficult to overcome. But when we recognize that such beliefs may not have any objective basis, then that can help us to begin to unglue them, question them, deconstruct them, to start to think differently, to experiment with the possibility that I am capable of much more than I've maybe been brought up to believe that I'm capable of. So this is really something I'm suggesting to explore for yourself. You know, look at these things that I'm suggesting. If they're not already very familiar to you about our potential and where we get our idea of our potential from, more limiting idea from. Because then, you know, that will help to take away the filters that prevent us from giving serious consideration to what we might want to achieve if we took away that agenda of, well, I'm never going to be very good at X, Y, or Z, or I'd like to do that, but I don't think I'll be able to manage it. Or often it's also a case of, well, of course I'd like to do X, Y, or Z, but I can't because dot, 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 because, you know, I have children, because I have a job, because I have responsibilities, because I have X, Y, and Z. And of course, that's all maybe extremely valid in the present moment, but it can inhibit us from looking beyond the present moment. Well, that might not be the case in whatever, you know, a few years' time. And maybe then hold open that possibility and you might be able to take some first steps. It's like if I want to, I have, you know, really sort of passionate wish. I wish I could play the piano. This is how we put it. I wish I could play it. I wish I was musical. I wish I could play the piano. But you know, I have my two children, so I can't practice for 3 hours every day. I have my job. You know, I couldn't do that. So we don't make a start. Maybe you could practice 15 minutes a day, get a lesson every 3 weeks, and then as the children grow, you might be able to do more. So what I'm saying is, you know, we tend to have like a very fixed picture of the structure of our lives. And that gets in the way of this organic growth that can happen. And as I say, the first step, and why we spent, in a way, several weeks on this in different ways, is to begin to get more clarity about what my, what my aims, my motivations would be if I could get rid of the things that tend to block them. Or even just, spend time really looking deeply to find out what they are if I've never asked myself that question, or if I haven't asked it very seriously or haven't asked it for a long time. I want to suggest it's always a very significant question to ask. And it's an ongoing inquiry. So, and I'm conscious that it can possibly sound as though I'm giving you a prescription of something that you ought to do, as if it was kind of my agenda, not yours. But I'm sure you can see that that's not the case. That what I'm trying to do throughout all of this is to encourage you to open up, to look at what is your agenda. What is it that would make your life meaningful from your point of view? It's a deep question. But I suggest that it is a question that is important for everyone. So you may not like Vedette, relate very well to the idea of writing down your 20-year goals. It doesn't have to be in that kind of explicit verbal formula or anything like that. But it's about, our lives become what they are because of our intentions and our motivations. And if we're not clearly conscious of them and aware of them, then it's like they don't, they're not necessarily leading us where we want to go. So it's about awareness, I would say, rather than necessarily verbally defining those, goals or objectives. Not necessarily about that, but it's about bringing awareness to that inquiry. We may get in touch with what's important in a very intuitive, non-verbal way, in whatever way, maybe, through just experiencing things, trying things out and think, oh, yeah, this makes me feel good, I'm going to follow this path. But whatever it is, the critical factor is that our mind is awake and noticing. If I say, oh, that feels good, so I'm going to do that, now that can lead us down a wrong path if we don't bring a good quality of awareness to it. Something might be very exciting, but maybe that's not quite enough. There are different kinds of excitement. Some are more healthy and wholesome than others. And we do have the ability to notice that, be aware of that. So we're going to continue this week, looking at, doesn't have to be in the form of goals, I guess, but this week, what I wanted to kind of bring out was the way in which we do have agency, we have control over how our life unfolds. And that control itself can increase our ability to have that control, to manifest the results that we want in our life. Our ability to do that also can increase. That's also helpful to think about. Yeah, because if I say, well, my experience at the moment isn't that I have very much control over that. And if we think that's fixed and that's how it is, then it may stay rather fixed. But if we can recognize that that's just how it is right now, and maybe I haven't practiced enough, maybe I haven't looked into this enough, maybe I haven't asked myself the right questions or looked into, different methods and things. There are incredible number of books and YouTube videos and courses and life coaches, and there's any amount of help out there for us to tune in more clearly to our real potential. And as I say, this isn't someone else's idea of what you should be doing. Right? That's very important. So, as I said at the beginning, this whole course is a big experiment. I'm just, I'm going through being guided by ideas from the Buddhist teachings, but really trying to avoid naming them in that form and speaking about them in the way that they're traditionally spoken about. And it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds over the next few weeks, because we're going to continue going deeper. And we're not going to spend the whole time talking about motivation. Maybe you'd be glad to hear, maybe you've heard enough. We're going to look at some other aspects, but this is very important, and we will return to it often. But it's the starting point. I'm going to quote one Buddhist teacher here, which is, because I love this quotation, and it's from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, actually, the main Lama in the tradition that the Jamyang Buddhist Center belongs to. And he said it many, many times, actually. It's one of his kind of favorite sayings. He says, all existence depends on the tip of a wish. Everything that exists was created. If you look around you, everything that you can see was created because somebody had an idea to create something. Even though I look outside the window, there's a lot of trees and plants and things, but as you know, I don't live in the jungle. Pretty much everything there was planted by somebody, whether it was planted by me or my wife. um, but the garden, you know, basically is the way it is because of ideas that we had and things that we did and results that came from them. So there's a huge tree in my garden, you know, and it's there because somebody planted a tiny seed. And I want to encourage everyone to, you know, let's look at our lives that way. If I can find the right seed, yes, I can grow a very big tree, a very beautiful tree, my tree, not someone else's tree. So I'm going to stop there and we can have some discussion. Thank you, everyone.